All right, once again, welcome to our Move to Panama series. I'm Dr. Daniel Daves. I'm here along with my friend Andrew Foote. Andrew, are you in the house?
I'm in the house.
All right. We're actually in different offices, and people are gathering in from all around the world. It's sure good to have you all with us tonight. If you have missed any of our other Move to Panama series, we do have those available for you. If you don't have the link, can't find the link, please contact either Andrew or myself. We'll get you the links. The first meeting that we did was a great one concerning immigration, international immigration. If you are planning to move anywhere in the world, especially the nation of Panama, we covered Panama real well. And then last week, we had a really good conversation as well, talking further about what are the living expenses in Panama and what does it take to move your things, to move your family. It was a great, well-rounded conversation, chocked full of questions and answers. After we do the exact same thing. I'm sorry about that. Let's see. Okay. I think you can hear me now. Still, is that good?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I did a mute on other microphones that are around in other people's computers, so that we can focus here. So we are tonight going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is going to be how does a guy or girl or a family make money outside of the United States of America? I think that's a really wide question, and I think we're going to cover a lot of territory. As soon as Andrew and I are finished with the basics, we're going to open up for questions and answers. If you would, please keep your microphone muted until that time. Once we open up for questions and answers, feel free to jump in and ask the question, then mute your mic, and we'll attempt to get you the answer. If we don't have the answer, we'll go searching for it, and we'll get it for you. All right. So first of all, a little due diligence before we start. I want to invite you to my website, drdanieldaves.com. I do have books and materials, different things that you can benefit from out there on that website. You may also see over here in the corner our globalfoodproviders.com. As many of you know, I'm involved in feeding widows and orphans in different nations. That's what we do with our nonprofit organization, and we have launched a global initiative called Global Food Providers. We're hoping that everyone will join that. 40% of the world runs out of food in less than 10 years. That means that 4 out of 10 people in 10 years from now will not be able to eat 1,000 calories of food per day. We have a real heart and a passion to curb that, to head it off, and so we are growing food in Panama, and we are encouraging others to grow food as well. It's a huge, deep subject. Go out to Global Food Providers, and you'll have a great time checking that out. Also, Andrew's website is strengthforthejourney.com, strength4thejourney.com. We've also put a little highlight there by a web address. Andrew's just put this together so that people can communicate at boquete.help@gmail.com. So many people around North America and in Europe are communicating and asking, what would it be like if I moved to Panama, specifically this beautiful little haven called Boquete? And so we are here to answer a lot of those questions. Hopefully we can find the answers for you. Andrew and his team are working and should be able to answer your questions quickly by email if you use that email address. So give that a shot and enjoy Andrew's site as well. He's got a lot of great information on there, as well as a weekly radio program and lots of archives that you can get in on. I really appreciate Andrew and his word from heaven. Okay, tonight what we're going to cover is how to make money internationally, how to set up a legal status for work and business, particularly in Panama, and steps to take now in preparation for the big move. If you're thinking about moving, what kind of steps should I be taking in preparation for a job or a business in another nation? Before we go too much further, I'd like to turn it over to Andrew at this time. Andrew, go ahead and take it from here.
Well, I think I guess the scariest thing for anybody is that you're going to leave the status that you've had there in the United States, your job, your security, and you're going to go to a new land and you're going to start over again, essentially. It's a scary thing. It's like how high can you be up in your nest to have to jump and not feel like you're going to splat on the rocks below? It's a scary thing, and part of the purpose of this discussion tonight is to help give you some ideas and some encouragement from the Word of God that it's okay. I tell a lot of people, they question me, they think, well, how am I going to do this? I'm leaving everything I own and I'm going to go to a foreign land. I'm going to start over. What is that going to look like? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, where are your ancestors from? And they say, a lot of times they'll say they're from Europe. I said, don't you think they had to do the same thing at some point in time in their life? Your ancestors that came over from Germany or from England or from France or wherever they may have come from, they came to a foreign land and landed in America, and you are the beneficiary of that move that they made maybe 100, 200, 300 years ago. And they lived, obviously, because you're alive right now. So although it seems scary to make this massive jump from point A to point B, there's something inside of you, there's a seed inside of you of greatness because your ancestors have done this before too. And so just to kind of give you some confidence and some comfort in the sense that even though you're jumping from your comfort zone, there is promises that lay out ahead of you. And the scripture that comes to my mind is in Mark chapter 10. And the rich young ruler came up before Jesus, and he was asking some questions about eternal life and all this kind of stuff. And you know the story. Jesus said, you lack one thing, go and sell what you have and give it to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come take up the cross and follow me. And he was sad at this saying and went away grieved because he had great possessions. He was too high up in the nest to see how he could ever survive if he ever jumped out of this thing to free fall into the Lord's arms. And Jesus looked around about him and he said, how hardly shall they that have riches enter into the kingdom of God. And this is a very scary thing because so much of us trust in our riches and trust in our job and trust in our savings and our 401k and our IRA, and those are really our security grounds for our soft landing, so to speak. And I believe the Lord is going to take away all these down feathers out of people's nests, out of all the cushions of the landing ground for retirement. I believe there's going to be some sudden changes in the world and the economy that's going to force people out of their nest. But it's much better to jump before you have to and are forced out, and then you have nothing at all. There's three types of people that left Germany. There's the type that left with their wealth, there's the type that left with the clothes on their back, and there's the other group was they didn't leave at all. And if you're going to make a move, if you feel like God's telling you to move because you see some things down the road that you don't like, it's better to leave with your wealth. And right now you're still in that time frame that you can leave with your wealth. Some of the fences are going up that's making it more difficult. But one of the things that I want to just encourage you with is that Jesus went on to say, when this man said, how hardly do they that have riches enter the kingdom of heaven, and the reason is because they can afford to be disobedient because they have enough comfort around them and enough security that their extra affords their disobedience. But God's calling his people right now to obedience. And there's great blessings that will follow obedience. In fact, it goes on through verses 24 through 30. And he said, verily I say unto you, there is no man that has left houses and brethren and sisters and father or mother or wife or children's or lands for my sake and the gospel's, but he shall receive 100-fold now in this time houses and brethren and sisters and mothers and children and lands with persecutions, and in the world to come eternal life. So he promises already in this lifetime if you'll do this for the gospel and for the purpose of obedience that God is telling you to do this, that there is great blessing that lays ahead of you. And I can tell you, it's not easy initially when you first land on this in your new planet, so to speak, without knowing the language or anything else. But as you make it through the trials and the refining process begins to go through you, as it has many of us that have already left for a while, um, it's like you have to look like a pruner. The pruning season is very difficult for all of us, but the thing is to encourage you is that fruitful seasons always follow pruning seasons. And I believe right now that my life is so much more fruitful than it's ever been in my entire life, but I had to be pruned. There was just too much stuff in my life that needed to be pruned out of my life, but I am for the better for it by allowing the Lord to do this in my life. And I can see now the hundredfold blessing that's beginning to come into my life now as my roots are going into the ground. All my leaves were stripped off me essentially, but now my roots have been reestablished. And what's great is that now I can be a strength to other people because of the strength that God's given me in my own life. And so it's really not about us. This whole move that we're all making right now, the transition is not just about us, it's about others. And if we can really focus that's just the Lord's heart, is that he's looking to save others. He's not just looking to save us. I really believe right now he's saying the whole purpose of our move is to serve him, but by serving him, we're serving others. And there's a great harvest ahead of us. And there's many people just like you listening right now that are benefiting from somebody going ahead of you, somebody that had a machete going through the jungle and blazing a trail now. The Lord said to me many years ago, the greatest heavenly followers become the greatest earthly leaders. And God's calling us all out to be heavenly followers right now, to listen to his voice and follow him, because if we'll do that, then we'll have the ability, the path will be set now for others to follow by our obedience. So I just wanted to encourage you with that tonight, that this is a step all of us must take now, is just to take that first step of obedience and then let the Lord lead the rest of the way.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you. For those of you who are ready for the challenge, one of my favorite songs of all time was Stephen Curtis Chapman's song, This is the Great Adventure. And it says, saddle up your horses. We've got a trail to blaze through the wild blue yonder with God's amazing grace. We'll follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is life like no other. This is the great adventure. And I believe God is calling people into the great adventure. And that is taking by the hand and let's go. Let's go to another land. It's amazing that the great United States of America, we have been in the past the light on the hill, the lamp not hidden under a bushel. We have been the salt that has salted and seasoned the earth. And when you are that, you are commissioned by God to send your missionaries, to send your people into the four corners of the earth, and to send the gospel, take the gospel, good news of Jesus, and the gospel of the kingdom of God, which the kingdom of God represents a better way to do things. I'm here to tell you today that Panama is desperately in need of the gospel of Jesus and the gospel of the kingdom of God. If there was ever a place that needed to know a faster way to do something, a better way to do something, something that you probably have had in your heart or known how to do easily your entire life. Amazingly enough, there's an entire nation, an entire Latin America who needs to know what you know. Now, when I was young, I remember looking up at the preacher in the pulpit, and I used to think, "There's no way I could ever do that. That guy's just too smart. He's too good of a speaker. I'm not an eloquent speaker." And I had all these reasons why I couldn't do it and do what they were doing. And when I thought of going to the nations, well, if I can't do it at home, how can I do it at the nations? But let me tell you today, it doesn't matter if you're a speaker or not. If you can fix a car, if you can speak English, if you can just smile and love children and show someone how to grow some crops and be more effective in life, If you can show them the 3 principles of this or the 4 steps of that, this world needs you desperately. Not on Sunday morning. They need you 24/7. So I want to encourage you that your gifts are needed around the world, and that's the way God has made this world tick. If we are the light on the hill, if we are a city filled with light, if we are the people of God, then we need to take what God's given us and share it with the rest of the world. And we happen to believe that Boquete is a perfect jump spot for many people, many of you, to come and live in. Why? Well, I believe that this is a great place to integrate into another culture, another language, another area of the world before maybe you'll stay here the rest of your life, but maybe you'll actually head Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. I think this place is actually a trampoline for people to come in and bounce right out into their destiny and their fulfillment. Well, let's talk briefly tonight about the jobs and business. I've got a little bit of a leadership or a leader a panel here we can work down through rules of work and business engagement in Panama. Now, some nations will be a little bit different, but we're going to discuss in particular Panama for those of you tonight that are deeply interested in this nation. First of all, as you can see here, if you're going to work a job, and amazingly enough, we Americans are big about jobs. We like jobs. We've always had a job. Most people have. My uncle always told me job means just over broke. So I think that there's maybe even a better way if you choose to make this your jump spot into the business arena. But yes, there are some jobs available in Panama, but I want to make it clear what I mean by that. First of all, if you're going to work in Panama, you need to have a residency status. We recommend the permanent residency, which is available right now, called the Friendly Nations Visa. It's the most powerful red carpet treatment that any nation is offering to the United States, Canada, 27 different nations to come here and have permanent residency. Once you get that residency, you can file for a work permit. It will cost you around $500 to file for that. And as soon as you file it, it could take up to 8 to 10 months to get it. So don't plan on working your job within 30 days after you get here. You have to ramp up if you're planning with a work permit. Now, there are jobs available. I've been in Panama City just a couple of weeks ago. I was there, and I was asking around, and there are actually some international companies. If you're interested in a job, I would recommend that you find companies that are internationally represented in the U.S. and Panama. So maybe, I don't know, Nestle or, whatever type of companies that are international. If they're here in Panama, the word on the street is that they are interested in hiring North Americans. Why? Because they are looking for some people who think like North Americans. This culture is different here, and this culture, in some degrees, needs to be trained in business and in commerce, and they're looking for people who think business like North Americans. If that's you, then maybe you can find a job with one of these multinational companies. However, don't plan on making USA prices. Now, would it be okay if your costs in Panama were only 50% of what it costs in the USA? Would it be okay if you only made 50% as much in Panama as the USA? I think that those are the stats. If you can live cheaper in Panama, you're going to get paid less, but the end result is the same. If your food, your rent, everything costs less, you're still going to be just fine if you get a job for less money here. Now, I'm going to cover one other quick thing in just a moment, but let's move on here. Panamanians typically own a few different industries in Panama. They own all retail space. In other words, if you go into a store, for the most part, with a few exceptions, you will find Panamanians that are working the storefront. If you need help with a dress or a pair of shoes, it's going to be a Panamanian that works that retail space. They also own some particular industries, such as an attorney, doctor, nurse positions. Before you jump, make sure you check to see if Panama will allow you to work in your profession before you plan on having a job over here. Now, there's many ways around this. We don't have time tonight to go through all of them. However, let's just say this. Let's say if you're a doctor. Well, maybe you can't be a doctor, but you could own a hospital and hire doctors and nurses. You could own a medical clinic and hire doctors and nurses. Um, if you're an attorney, you're not going to be able to practice law, but you could hire a handful of attorneys and have a law firm. So there are ways to do your profession here. You just may have to shift gears a little bit and get out of the job mode and in the entrepreneurial mode. Now let's talk about entrepreneur for just a moment. These opportunities are abounding. Panama is in a 30-year business cycle behind North America. I'll say I was in Costa Rica a few years ago, and they just had the fried donut. It was the greatest invention of all. Can you believe it? They stood in line for an hour to get their fried donut in Costa Rica. It was the same fried donut that we had at Krispy Kreme 30 years ago. About 6-7 years ago, in Costa Rica and Panama, the greatest new thing happened. It was called the shopping mall. You know, that place where 200 stores gather together. They have a food court and a movie theater. Wow, it's the greatest new thing since sliced bread. Oh, yeah, except it just happened here about 5 or 6 years ago. So if you can figure out a 30-year business cycle swing, what was hot in the United States or Canada or even Europe 30 years ago, it may be, I say maybe, it may be ready to hit and pop here now. So for entrepreneurs, I really recommend you take hold of business cycles and swings and get a hold of it. Let's talk about the internet for a minute. Internet, 1 out of 100 companies in Panama have a website right now. Only 1 out of 100 companies or storefronts. 1%. And that storefront, if you go look at it, it's just a shell. It's a storefront. There's nothing behind it. You can't order products. You can't get things shipped. This industry is just ready to boom with internet. Shipping industry is ready to boom. Right now, it's kind of hard to get things from one side of the country to the other. But I'm telling you, a DHL, a Federal Express, someone's going to get a few trucks together and start shipping things and is going to develop a dynasty in this country. It's ready to boom in areas that we have enjoyed for decades. So choose your field and prepare to serve the nation. Again, incomes, salaries, profits may be less, but your living expenses will also be less. So don't freak out when you find out what people are making in Panama. Also, it's important, if you are going to run a business, you can take advantage of skill. I'm telling you, there's no one better than a Panamanian who can build wood, solid doors, windows, all kinds of capacity and skill in building with Panamanians. You can't beat them. They are the best there is. And they are hard workers. Many of them have to work out in a monstrous heat or the equator type of sun if they work outside, and they know how to pace themselves and get the job done. Now, I want to say this. Don't take advantage of the Panamanians, but take advantage of their skill. Use your capacity to employ them. Most of them here are just looking for a good job, and they're actually looking for a good boss. I don't see many good employers around. I see a lot of guys that treat their employees pretty doggone bad. But, you know, if you want a real ministry, start a company and minister to these Panamanians and their families and just be nice to them, and you will have rocketed their lives forward 100 years. Again, don't try to compete for a Panamanian's job. Many Panamanians can work for $500, $600, $800 a month full time. Their house is paid off. They can get to work for 50 cents in a taxi cab. There's no way you can compete with that. So don't even try. Instead, take your energy and find a way to offer them jobs and help them learn how to become job creators if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I think there's a lot of opportunities, Andrew, in the entrepreneurial field. Every time you and I get together, I hear three more ideas come out of you, and unfortunately, we don't have enough time to do any of them. But they're all over the place, aren't they?
They're everywhere. You know, the biggest problem is you have to change your attitude of the opportunities. I had an experience back in 2008 when I was trying to figure out how I was going to deal with the sudden downturn in the economy. I traveled a lot and I sold equipment for a number of different automotive tool companies, and you know, instead of me doing a demonstration with a tool and getting a 70 to 80% closing rate, I was down to about 20%, and I was trying to figure out how am I going to continue to be on the road, pay all the gas bills, hotel, food, etc. During this time, and make up the difference with these lost sales. And I was just praying, asking the Lord to help me. How am I going to do this thing? And I was sitting in a parking lot at a Costco in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I was listening to this lady describe the Great Depression and what was going on during the Great Depression. She was just beginning to talk about statistics, and there's two statistics that she mentioned that totally revolutionized my mindset at that time. And the first one was that 30% of the businesses during the Great Depression thrived, and there was more millionaires made during the Great Depression than any other time in American history. And those two, when I heard those two things, I just all of a sudden this black cloud just blew away over my head, and all of a sudden I see in blue sky, and I said, you know what, that means that these tough times are actually an opportune time. It's a time of opportunity. And as I began to go back to the body shops and selling them equipment, I was looking, I noticed old equipment sitting in the shop back in the corner gathering dust, and I thought, you know, there looks like they're not using that anymore, but I know some shops that could use that. And so I asked them what they'd want to sell it for, and they gave me a price, and it was a very reasonable price. I took it home, cleaned it up, refurbished it, and I started carrying used equipment along with new equipment. And my business grew over the next 7 years, or the next 5 years that we were there, from 2008 to 2012. And what it really told me was that every time, even hard times are opportune times, but you just have to have the mindset first to look for them and see the opportunities. People come around here and they go, oh, there's just no jobs, there's blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, no jobs, why don't you make a job? Why don't you start thinking outside the box? Instead of you being the employee mentality, why don't you be the employer mentality and start creating a job? And I think that many times it's what's difficult for people coming out of the States right now is that they've used to having an 8-to-5 job, and somebody's employed them. And so how are they going to make this transition from just a basic somebody just goes to work and somebody pays their paycheck to somebody that's actually thinking about a job opportunity? And what we're going to talk about tonight, I'm sure, Daniel, you've got a number of things on your mind too, but you know, there's skill levels that everybody has. There's hobbies that people do at home or wish they could have done. If maybe things that you could have thought, you know, if I hadn't got a job or if I hadn't got married, you know, this is one of my things I would love to have done. This is like one of those dreams that I've always dreamed of doing. Well, guess what? You may just have that opportunity to do that dream that you never had to before. Maybe a hobby that you were gifted in. Maybe you can paint. Maybe you're an incredible artist, but you've never developed that skill, or maybe you've never exercised it. You know, there's just so many skills and abilities everybody has that God's given them, but they just sat there just like those talents that were buried. And I think God's trying to get the talents out from under the ground now and begin to be utilized in people. But frankly, you've got to let go of what you got in your hand to find out what you got inside of you. And this is one of the blessings that comes when you finally leave your comfort zone, is that you're forced to be able to look deeper down inside of you, what's inside of you, and what do I really have to offer. So what do you think, Daniel? Where do you where do you have your mindset right now as far as helping these people get out of that mindset of the old wineskin? Are you there, Daniel?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So I don't know if Daniel's right
I,
there, but
I had just
okay, go
muted
ahead. Go ahead.
myself, and I was sitting here talking away and
Okay.
had no idea until you said, "Are you there?" while I was talking. Sorry about that. Let's talk about for a moment. Let's just use let's look at a principle, because some here are going to be led into the great adventure of maybe starting a business or doing something for the first time in their life, really jumping out. I'll tell you, I'm right now in the biggest step of faith in my life. What the things that I've done in the past scared me before, but those were dwarfed by what I feel the Lord is calling us to do at this time, but it's so exciting to see Him opening doors, and you've heard of the word the Great Commission. The Great Commission. The word commission is two words. It's co-mission, or other words, two people are walking together. And the Great Commission means when you and God step in together and start doing something together. Imagine being a partner with God in the Great Commission. And that's exactly what the Lord is doing all over the place right now. He's firing people up. He's going into business and into ministry with people all over the world. Let's take a quick look at this business principle. I think this is important for many that are here tonight. First of all, there are only three ways that I know of to create wealth. You either have to grow it, mine it, or make it. Grow it, mine it, or make it. So here we have a greenhouse. It's been growing some food. You've planted the seed. It's growing. It's creating sun. The sun is hitting the plants, and all of the processes. You're watering, and you get a crop, and you sell that crop. You have just created wealth. You can mine it, pull it out of the ground. Gold, silver, coal, copper, you name it. Something you could pull out of the ground, and you are creating wealth. Or you can make it. You see these guys making these airplanes. They're taking thousands of parts from different places, and they are making something that will be useful, that can serve the community. This happens to be jet airplanes here. So grow it, mine it, or make it. Unfortunately, most Americans, not all, but most Americans work jobs that have nothing to do with growing, mining, or making. As a matter of fact, if we look at our recent history in North America, we aren't growing, mining, or making much. It's all been transferred over to Asia and other nations who are growing, mining, and making it, and they are accumulating all the wealth as we are paying for the things they're growing, mining, and making. So true wealth creation, America and Americans, and you and I, we're going to have to come back to this at some point. We're going to have to come back. Now, if you don't grow it, mine it, or make it, you may be a service industry that, let's say, you transport it. You can get it to the grocery store shelves in your truck. That is valid. It's a valid business. Transportation or refrigeration or a process of some kind that helps get this vegetable to the dinner table. But if you are simply sitting at a bank and taking dollar bills, handing them out and taking them, there is somewhat of a service being done there, but it's all zeros and ones, and it's all fiat currency. As a matter of fact, so many North American jobs are probably going to go up in smoke if a real depression or a real crisis hits, because many jobs are not necessarily needed. They are desired, or they're sure nice to have in good times, but in bad times, those jobs go away. A lot of times I'll take teenagers out for a little wealth 101 class, and I'll take them down to a little shopping center. And we'll go through and I'll say, okay, tough times have hit. Everyone's pulling their dollars back. 25% of the population has just lost their jobs. It's real tough times. Now you tell me which businesses make it and which ones are going away. So we kind of walk or drive down through a strip mall center, and of course I'll say, what about this suntan salon? Gone. No one has money for suntans when you're trying to feed the kids. What about the gas station? Good question. Maybe or maybe not in business. What about the grocery store? Absolutely. Slam dunk. Everyone has to eat. The grocery store stays in business unless it got itself upside down in debt or something stupid. The grocery store stays in business. Well, what about this or that? You need to think for yourself. The job you have right now, does it go away or does it stay in tough times? In this coming tough time, we're all pretty convinced that the U.S. dollar, which is 19 trillion on paper in debt and over 200 trillion in debt off the books, but which is still owed, and within the quadrillions of debt when you add the banker problems that we have and their bad business deals that they've cut. So our country is bankrupt, and the day that China and other nations call that in and say, we want our payment back, when this next collapse happens, there's a high probability that the country's not going to come back this time. You saw the bounce in the stock market this last time, 2008, 2009, the market bounced, but it bounced solely on an inflated dollar that the Federal Reserve pumped. They said 787 billion, but it was literally trillions of continued Q1, QE1, 2, 3, and soon to be QE4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 10. It will never stop. They have to keep inflating to keep the markets going up. Who's buying this straight up market? Are you buying it? Did you buy the Dow at the all-time high? No. Who's buying this are the banks that are being handed the money free of charge, and they're buying this up. It sure looks good. When people say, hey, there's a crisis coming, others will point to the market and say, but look at the market. The market says the country's doing great. The market is lying to you and is being manipulated by the liars. My overall point is this: check your job and see if it survives the coming collapse of the dollar and our national debt. If it doesn't survive, when will your job come back if the United States of America cycles out of being a world leader and turning into a third world slave nation to the World Bank and China? When does your job come back? And if it doesn't, it may be time to take less of a risk and restart in a nation that's actually growing rather than stick around in a country that's headed for the pit. So grow it, mine it, or make it. That is a principle to take with you. I can't in this overall meeting sit down with you and talk about your widget and whether it's a perfect fit for Central America. We could do that privately at another time. But this is an overall for you to take hold of these notes and start figuring, is my job, is my business, is my future, and even more importantly, in my opinion, is my children's future going to make it here in this country? If there's a question at all, I believe that we need to take some action. Here's a couple of scriptures. Let's see here if I can find this one here. Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. We do know that. We need to have a vision, and you need to have a vision for more than 1 year from now. It's time to develop your vision for 10, 20, and 50 years out. Why? Because the Bible says in Proverbs, I believe it's 19, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That means 50 years from now. Everything you and I do should be heading towards blessing those grandkids so they don't have to recreate the wheel. And if you look 50 years into America's future, where is she? I'm not sure where she's at, but I don't think she's moving on up. As I have studied for years, I've studied history. I remember when France was known for more than just French fries as the world leading nation. And England was the world leader and now is known for fish and chips. And now the United States has been the world leader, and her cycle is coming to an end as money is moving east and departing the west. Do you want to leave your kids with hamstrung over the next 50 years? If not, please consider another location in the world, because while some nations are heading down, that wealth is being transferred and other nations are heading up. While populations are disappearing, other nations are growing. And Panama just happens, I believe, I see it here every day, it's in a growth spurt. There's building taking place every day. If you go to Panama City, you will find 6 to 8 new skyscrapers going up every time you show up in Panama. They're building buildings everywhere and filling them with rental units, with businesses, with banks. Lots of banks in Panama City. So I would recommend take a look there and plan for your future. Without a vision, you're sure to perish. But with the vision, you can lead your family, your faith, your finances, and your future in a type of Noah's Ark. Now's the time to build the ark and make the move. You can make this move, and you can do it successfully, and your family is going to be blessed for generations to come. Andrew?
What comes to my mind is it's very difficult to imagine, having everything at your fingertips most all your life. You go to the grocery store and there's food, and whatever you need, it's always there. And it's difficult to imagine anything but that, especially if that's all you've ever known. I began to travel with a ministry. I was a photographer, and I got my eyes opened to the real world back in the mid to late 80s. And my first trip to Ukraine back in the late 80s, early 90s, we were going from Kiev, and we're going to go minister to an orphanage up near Chernobyl. And as I was leaving the outskirts of Kiev, I was looking up on the hillside of different homes, and these homes were kind of like in the suburbs of the city, and there were chain link fences around the property. But instead of having a nice green grass and a little jungle gym, like most little families, family of 4 or 5 would have, like the United States, it was a garden, and it was from one end of the fence to the other. There was not a space of playroom at all in that yard. It was all grown just to survive for the family. And the Lord spoke to me as I looked up on the hill and saw all these houses with the gardens from filling their chain link fence. And He said to me, He said, "What makes you so great this couldn't happen to you?" And it really struck me because I didn't even know how to grow a garden. And it really began to change my whole mindset that I don't even know how to do step one if there was no food in the grocery store. I couldn't even take care of myself or my family. And I expanded my father's garden the next year, and I began to learn how to grow a garden. And I'll tell you what, if my life depended on that first crop that I was to grow, I would have probably died. I would have been like the pilgrims that first winter, having a very meager harvest, because I didn't really know how to grow a garden. And I realized there's a learning curve even to go into this thing of transitioning. And all to say is that we don't realize how quickly our world can turn upside down and change, and most people are so ill-prepared for a change that it'll be very difficult for them to survive. And it just makes more sense to me that if you can leave your comfort zone early and go to a place that is already on the upswing, as Daniel just showed, there's a downturn in nations' histories, and there's upturns in other nations' histories. Why don't you get on the up elevator instead of staying on the down escalator? It just makes more sense to me. Most people don't have the capacity or the ability to go through this tough transition, and it makes more sense to even start over again in another land where you can start over. I think the opportunities are great. There's many people that are looking for skills that people have. Whether you have maybe a hobby of yours is working on computers. What is your hobby? Could you possibly make a living doing your hobby? There's just, I see people, there's a little gringo market, they call it Tuesday morning market, and people bring their whatever little hobby business that they have. Maybe they bought a little property, they got some coffee trees on it, they make coffee. There's one guy that his something he always wanted to do was to have a bakery. And so he began to bake bread and take it to this little market. Well, it grew so much that he started an actual storefront bakery here. These people are retirement ages, but they want to start over and use their skills or their talents or their gifts in some way or form. And I have 6 children living here with me, and so it's almost like if somebody goes in front of you and well, I got children. Well, okay, how many children you got? Oh, I got 2. Well, we've made it with 6. So where's the excuse? Everybody's kind of looking for excuses to not do God's will for their life. If God's calling you to go, guess what? He'll provide for you. He'll take care of you if He's telling you to go. And what this whole message is for people who are willing to go and just want some ideas. They say, okay, I've got this desire. I have this kind of mandate. I feel like God's putting this on my heart. And what the webinars are all about is trying to give people some ideas, some step-by-step, and we're just trying to help pave a way in your mind to try to eliminate the excuses. Even one of the biggest tragedies I find when people actually come here is they forget that God told them to come. And the enemy begins to speak doubt and says, hath God said? And they start getting nervous because maybe there's not enough manna falling from heaven that day. But you know what? I just know that these are trying. It's a place of trying too. Is that because when you're in your comfort zone, you really will never get stretched. You'll never really get tried and tested because everything's good. But when you actually are willing to step out, and this is where the real growth comes from in all of our lives, is when we're willing to step out and be stretched. And I can tell you that I'm not the same person 3 years ago that left Montana. God has done such an amazing work in my life, but it never would have happened if I stayed where I was. And I'm so thankful. My whole family has had such a great transition and transformation in each one of their lives that all I can think is I wish it had happened sooner, because the work has been so good in my life. And I know it may be tough, but what's really nice too is we're beginning to get a network of people here, the support group, and that's what we're trying to get started with this Boquete.help or .com or gmail.com email, and we're starting a website as well. I believe it's boquetehelp.com. But we're trying to do everything so people that really feel like they're called to come, we want to eliminate all the excuses that are going to come to people that will try to dissuade them and make them turn, either go back to Egypt or never leave Egypt. So I hope these webinars are encouraging to you, and we'd love any feedback and ideas as we go about doing these webinars.
Thanks, Andrew. As we are preparing for the question and answer time, if you don't have a microphone or you're not comfortable with talking on the mic, feel free to use the chat room there. There's a chat on the GoToMeeting area. Feel free to type in your question. We have had a question asked already. It was a great question. I was so glad it was asked because we would not have covered it tonight if not. Thanks, David. And but right before that, let's go through just a couple of other things. I'm going to talk to you for a moment, not about Panama City, not necessarily about David. Now, David or David is down at a much lower elevation. It's pretty hot down there. I'm a real cool weather guy. If you're a person that says, just get me to the beach, you're going to love David. It's right down by the beaches. And it's just that beach weather. But I like it cold. I like 65 to 85. Not so interested in the 85. I'd rather dip that down a little if possible. But I can handle 85, and that's what Boquete is. So that's why I really love this weather up here. God has blessed us so greatly. He gave me heaven's air conditioner where I was cranking 3 big units in Dallas, Texas, 9 months out of the year, 24/7, just to keep my house conditioned. And here I have God's air conditioning, and don't even have an air conditioner in the house. So wow, what a great opportunity. That's how great the weather is here. But let's talk about Boquete. Boquete is a small town. I'm just going to guesstimate here, around 20,000 people is what I've told. About 5,000 are North American and European expats speaking different languages than than Spanish. And interestingly enough, about anywhere you go in Boquete, you can find someone who speaks English, whether it's a store or one of the 60-some restaurants here, the farmers markets, all of that. You can find someone to communicate. If it just so happens that there is no one in English, you will become a master at charades and be able to talk with your hands and speaking English very loudly, which for some reason we English people think they can understand if we say it louder. That's my problem. Anyway, so in Boquete, though, there are huge, huge opportunities. This sleepy little town is growing like crazy. It's a little more expensive to live here than down the road in David and over off in some of the farming communities. It's expensive because it's growing and it's gorgeous and that there's just a high demand here. But I would like to take you through just a few of the opportunities. While I'm saying some of them, I'm sure Andrew's going to get sparked here and he's going to be thinking of a few as well. I want to talk about some of the different industries. First of all, we could just simply wholesale, retail, shipping. We could say clothing. We could say food. We could go on to building materials. We could go on and on. But the industry of serving the community and serving the need. There are all kinds of needs here right now, and some that are coming very, very fast. As a matter of fact, I'm going to step out and say Boquete, Panama is in a crisis right now, but we don't realize we're in a crisis. I'm always trying to move ahead. That's why I'm in Panama. I'm moving ahead of the scale. I learned to do that in stock market training years ago. Find the trend and get on early. And so let's talk about some of the opportunities that are here. Now, here's one of the opportunities. The Panama government believes that 5,000 people are moving to the Chiriqui province, to Boquete, David, this area, in the next 18 months. Why? Because they just connected a jumper flight from the U.S. down to Panama City, and from there they just put a jumper flight with Copa Airlines all the way across the country to the other side over to David. Now, until then, it was an 8-hour bus drive, a 7-hour auto drive, or you had to take a cab 30 minutes into the middle of town and find a jumper flight over to David, which could have been very expensive and hard to get. It was just hard. Now it's U.S. bounce David, and you are in this province. Because of that, they believe 5,000 people are coming. Well, what was the population? Population's around 20,000. We're going to add 5,000 to that population in the next 18 months. I personally believe it could be much higher than that, especially if we get a dollar devaluation or some kind of stupid stuff happens in the United States. I think a lot of people will say, that's it. That was my line crossed. I'm moving. Well, what if there was 15,000 people that came? Well, we won't worry about that right now. Let's just try to figure out the crisis of 5,000 people coming up this mountain where there's already 20 here. I think I may be off base, but I think there's only probably 12 to 18 homes for rent right now in Boquete, Panama. Maybe some more if we really rooted them out, but a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, there's only a handful of rental units available here. 5,000 people coming up this mountain, where are they going to live? We have a crisis on our hands. If you're hearing me, take hold of this thing. Now, let's say they're coming up the mountain from the airport, but how are they coming up the mountain? Are they coming up in a rental car? Andrew, how many rental cars would you say are in Boquete right now?
I'd have to say, I think Cowboy Dave has about maybe 25. There's usually about 6 cars over value. and then Terry's got a couple. So you're looking at about 35 maybe, something like
35
that.
cars, 35 rental cars in the whole area with 5,000 people coming up. Who's going to get the car? We have a crisis on our hands. We have a little grocery store in Boquete called Romero. We have another little one called Super Ivan. 5,000 more people. Now, Andrew, you and I know the story behind this, but can you imagine, Andrew, if 5,000 more people jammed Romero downtown in Boquete? Um, no one will be able to buy anything. We can hardly get in there now. It's so busy and so full at all times, you can hardly find a parking place in that area. People divert and go other places because they don't want the trouble of getting down to that little small town grocery store. We need food supply, grocery stores. On and on we go. What are the needs of a human being that's moving into a new territory from another nation? Shipping, schooling, education, utilities, cell phones, clothing, pots and pans, you name it. There is a relocation demand. And if 5,000 people are coming and we've only got 35 cars and 18 homes for rent, someone needs to jump this opportunity because it is a crisis that is quickly on its way to happening. As we see anywhere from 2 to 10 families a week right now that we know of that are coming up. They're contacting us in advance and saying, we want to meet up with you guys and fellowship, come to church while we're in town. But there are so many more coming than we don't even know about them. And so there are opportunities abounding. There's also one other thing that is slated to happen, which really blesses me. I want to talk about the nation of Israel just for a moment. I love Israel, and I know through years, decades of being a believer, you don't ever talk about Israel. You don't talk against Israel. You don't mess with Israel. They're God's people, and God has an affinity for them, and we need to bless them. Whoever blesses you, Abram, I will bless, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Well, I want to talk about Israel for a moment because I see that we just threatened Israel that if they attacked Iran's nuclear bomb-making equipment, that we would shoot our president said he's going to shoot Israeli jets out of the sky if they make an attack towards Iran. We're also dividing Israel. This week, the Supreme Court just decided that Israel, up through history, it's my understanding that an Israeli with a U.S. passport, they've always been able to say birthplace Jerusalem. But because our administration is planning to divide Jerusalem and hand it over to the Palestinians, the Supreme Court just upheld an executive decision that Israelis are no longer allowed to say their birthplace is Jerusalem because it's not acknowledged by the United States of America as a place, as one of Israel's locations. Unbelievable stuff. We last month just handed the Israel's deep military secrets. We handed those secrets, all of their nuclear capacity. We handed that secret to their enemies. We basically declared war against Israel. And so at the same time that things are deteriorating between the United States and Israel, I found myself living here in Boquete, which is in Latin. Boquete means narrow gap or narrow gate. I found that in the Bible to be very interesting. If you make it here, you make it to the narrow gate, the narrow gap. Down the road is the city of David. It was settled by Jewish settlers and named David for a reason. We're right beside a beautiful volcano that's been dormant. Don't worry, it's a dormant volcano, but it's called Beru. It's the Vulcan Beru, which is short for Baruch, which means the blessing. It was named by the Jews. We have some billionaires that have stepped up to the plate recently, and they're very concerned about what's going on in Israel and with the Gaza Strip and the Palestinians taking over the occupied area or Gaza Strip, whatever it was. And the displaced Israelis have been invited to move to Boquete, Panama. They have already isolated a 2,000-acre plot of land, divided it up into 1-acre plots, and have blessed it. They've got guards on every corner of this thing. No one gets on it now. And they have invited the Israelis who were displaced from the Gaza Strip to come live in Boquete, Panama. Maybe that's part of the 5,000 they know that are coming. One of the prime ministers that sits beside Netanyahu just proclaimed Panama as Israel's greatest friend and ally during these times. Are you seeing something? Do you hear something? While some nations are heading away, other nations are heading to. This seems to be a place of great honor, and I believe God's hand comes upon nations who bless Israel and who bless the gospel and who bless those who want to come and live here and be free and to have the freedom to live the gospel of Jesus and to preach the gospel of Jesus and to help bring the gospel of Jesus into the prisons, into the schools, and into the government. The governments here are asking for the Christians and the ministry to bring the gospel to the prisons and the schools. They're saying, we can handle all the rest. You have to handle the spiritual part. I love that, and it reminds me of about 30 years ago in the United States of America. So I want to encourage you now. We're talking about opportunity. If thousands of Israelis are coming to town, if 5,000 others are marching up the road, do you see an opportunity in the making? I sure do. And I think if you need more critical detail on that, let's talk in private. Send me an email. We can talk. Send your idea, and I'll fire it back at you with any ideas that I have. Now, we're busy enough over here. We're not interested in stealing your idea. There's too many to be stolen. There's thousands and thousands of opportunities sitting here in this little hidden zone. So that's very, very exciting to me. Let's see. Before we go into, let's just do this. Let's go ahead and open up into questions and answers at this time. And while you guys are getting ready with questions and answers, get ready to turn your mics on. I'm going to go ahead and free everyone's mic up. And as I'm doing that, I want to read a question here that was laid out in the chat room. And this is a great question. Is a work permit needed in Panama to work a job that you're carrying over from the U.S.? Let's say, are you working online? You're working telephones. By the way, did you know you can get a Magic Jack phone with a U.S. number, plug it into your internet service, sit here in gorgeous Panama, answer the phone, make sales calls, and no one would ever know you left home. They'd think you were right next door in the U.S., and you could be enjoying life in another country. The answer is, if you're working a U.S. job, receiving U.S. wages, you don't need any work permit in Panama. Panama does not see any income coming from that. They don't see, there's no reason for Panama to tax it or to have authority over it. So you do not need a work permit to work a U.S. job in Panama. That's great, great news. As a matter of fact, if you're planning on moving to Panama, you might want to consider starting an internet business of some kind. How about a business, as Andrew was saying, he found a different niche in his tools. Well, what if you would take your niche and turn it into an online business where people would buy and you'd have someone ship for you, have them drop ship, and you're living in another country, working your business, your internet business from another country. Many, many opportunities there. So no, you don't need a work permit for working remote. We just talked to an individual today. He called in. His wife is going to be working online from Panama, working for one of the largest banks in the country. But they won't need her in an office. They're going to let her work from Panama. Very, very exciting indeed. And what if, let me throw this out, what if you think your job may be on the line, but you could move to Panama and offer them to say, listen, hire me for half price of what you've been paying me. I'm moving to Panama. I'll do all the work. online through the telephone, and you pay me half of what you're going to pay my replacement. Think about that. Would that help you keep a job in a time of trouble? It certainly might, when everyone's demanding and they all have to have the minimum wage, the new $15 an hour, and you come in and say, listen, I'll work for less. This is what I can work for. It could save your job and get you out of the country at the same time. That was just a quick thought. Okay, looks like we've got another, let's see, another question here. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not questions. They are. Someone said we are 5 of that 5,000. Here we come. Great, come on down. We look forward to meeting with you. You are. You have to count in 4 more here. We're coming. Okay. All right. Well, we're sure glad you guys are on your way. I'll tell you what, it's sure been an amazing thing watching God assemble a team and supply all of their needs. Here is a question. Do you know if that is true for Costa Rica as well? I am absolutely positive. I lived for 3.5 years in Costa Rica. I'm positive that if you have an online job in the U.S. and you are paid in the U.S., Costa Rica has no bearing or authority over you. I'm sure of that. Now, if you have a phone answering job in Costa Rica, you're answering AT&T's phone, but you're being paid in Costa Rica, then you're going to have to deal with Costa Rica law at that time. Another quick thing to understand as well, this is taxes. There should be probably a night on taxes, but some pretty exciting tax opportunities. Did you know that your government will pay you to leave the country? They will pay you to get out. Well, first of all, if you leave, you're no longer subjected to Obamacare. You make any money outside of the country. We are a nation. The United States and North Korea are the only 2 nations in the world who tax their citizens wherever you're at, just because you're a citizen, not by where you're working. So if you're making money in any other country, you may owe tax in the United States for your money you're making in the other country. However, there are thresholds and limits. Now, each year it goes different. So I may be off by $1,000, or I might be off by 500, or if you've watched this 5 years later, I might be off by 10 grand. I don't know. But as of right now, each U.S. citizen working and living outside of the U.S., you are allowed $96,000 per year of income to be made internationally before they even want to hear from you. If you make 97, then that extra 1,000, you're going to need to claim that and pay some tax on your 1040 or your 1090 or your 1040 tax return. 96,000 a year. It's been going up $500 a year. It seems like every year it goes up a little bit further. But what if you're a family of 4? Well, dad makes 96, mom makes 96, little Johnny makes 96, and Susie makes 96, and you basically can make around $400,000 a year out here with no taxation due to the United States. So you come under a completely different, smaller tax code in another country. It gets even better than that, and we don't have time to talk in detail about it, but there's what's called the Golden Triangle. Attorney firms will charge you $15,000 to teach you the Golden Triangle. If this is the U.S., you have a corporation in Costa Rica and you're doing your work in Panama, and you understand legally how to have each of those companies working for one another, you can work tax-free. Did I say tax-free? Just like the million and billionaires do all day long. The tax code is built for them. And if you understand the Golden Triangle, it's built for you as well. Ignorance is very costly for those who don't know how the law is written. So just study your Golden Triangle. That's something I teach individually as I have time with my clients. But there are ways to really save money. And the fact is, if you can make $96,000 a year each outside of the United States and they don't want to hear about it, and you're going to get out of Obamacare, and you're going to get out of the high taxation, the continued rise in taxation and police state activities, I'd say they're paying you to leave. There's coming a day they won't pay you to leave any longer, but as of now, they're paying you to make the decision to leave and go elsewhere. Don't worry, your replacement's coming up through the Mexican border right now, so there will be a warm body to fill your chair. We're going to open up now to all microphones. If you have a question, feel free to type it in or jump on your mic and ask. We're ready for you. I don't see any questions at this time. Let me answer David's typed question. What is the urgency from the Panama government to do something with the C Corp to get the FNV? To get the FNV. I'm not following you perfectly there, David. This also is a business plan required to show you plan to provide X. I'm assuming you're talking, David, about when you're coming in under the Friendly Nations visa. Listen, they don't want to know much. They want your birth certificate. They want your marriage certificate. They want an FBI background check to make sure you're clean and not some bad felon or someone running from the law. And they want to see that you've got a few $1,000s in a bank account, and they want you to start up a Panama corporation so you can do business. With those 5 things, you're in, and you are a permanent resident, welcomed to live and to do business here the rest of your life. So there is no business plan required whatsoever. They don't even want to know what you're planning to do when you get here. They just want you to have your corp and to have your documents in place. I'm not sure what the urgency is, so if you could maybe enlighten me on that. Urgency of the Panama government to do something with the C Corp to get the FNV. A C Corp in Panama is typically called an SA, Societal Anónima. I believe it is something like that in Spanish. That's basically a C Corp, and I'm not sure what the FNV is. So, do you know it, Andrew?
Well, I'm not sure. The C Corp, the FNV, of course, he's talking about the Friendly Nation visa.
I'm sorry, okay.
But just to kind of give people a little bit of a heads up, we've talked I have a lawyer in Panama City who's kind of given me a little bit of an inside scoop on the possibility that this Friendly Nation visa, some changes may take place this fall. And so she was just telling me, just kind of a heads up, that if people, and she's saying this to her clients as well, is that if people are looking to get this visa, they need to get moving on it, because it was only signed in as an executive order under the former president back around May of 2012. And so I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do for a visa? I mean, you have to buy property, you got to buy a farm. I mean, you're talking like, a couple $100,000 worth of investment just to get a visa. So I was looking at, well, maybe I can get a missionary visa or something, along that line. And then all of a sudden, his Friendly Nation visa showed up. It was just a godsend. And boy, I tell you that this is an opportunity for many people if they don't have a whole lot of money to invest, because if this Friendly Nation visa goes away and you don't have a retirement plan like Social Security or something else that could get you the pensionado visa, it could be a very costly deal to get a visa, just like many other countries right now. It's very costly to get a visa in some other countries right now. So this is just a golden opportunity right now. If people are serious about moving, I think it's very important that you don't just come or go under a tourist visa, because if something were to happen in the United States and there's a sudden float, you got people floating down on makeshift rafts to leave the country like they did from Cuba, I got a feeling that they're going to be shutting the borders down on just tourists, because they don't want the riffraff to be showing up. So this is just an opportunity. I think people need to jump on it if this is what they want to do, if they feel like God's calling them to leave. These opportunities don't always last. I tell even people, look, if you feel like God is telling you to do something, do everything He's telling you to do now, because if you don't use your time wisely, what the things that you know you need to do now, there are so many things in the future that you don't even know you need to do that you won't have time for. So it's one of the things the Lord spoke to me on my first New Year's Day that I didn't have a hangover after I got saved back in 1986. I woke up and he said, be a good steward of your time because it's no longer your time, it's mine. And I was just recognizing that, so many of us are really not stewarding our time wisely. And if something were to happen this fall with the stock market and things like that, I look at it right now that we have an hourglass that's got 90 grains of sand in it, so to speak, that we need to use our time very wisely right now and make the most of it. If God's telling us to do something, we can't guarantee there's going to be forever to get those things done if we're not being a good steward of the time that we've been given right now. So I just encourage you that are listening that if the Lord is speaking to you to do something, please don't delay, don't put it off, because there's so many things that you don't know, and we all don't know of the unknowns, and I believe the unknowns are going to begin to play in very soon. Some of the things that maybe we've never seen happen before. We've never had an entire world that's based upon a fiat currency at one time. And so there could be some major changes, and if you're not obedient to do what God says to do, then there's nobody to blame but ourselves. So we just need to hear and obey. And that's I also wanted to share something too about the fact that the Boquete means narrow passage. And I tell you, when we got here, we didn't know what to expect, but it's a spiritual narrow passage as well, because it was a place of refining for me and my family. And although we're telling you some great things and encouraging those that are listening of the great things that come as a result of leaving, there's a testing and a trying. And I've seen some people that I've seen as great, strong Christians that have bowed under the pressure of leaving their comfort zone. And one turned back in about 2 months.
All right, I'm not sure. It looks like we may have lost Andrew for just a moment.
That quick money has never showed up, and most of the money that he's made just to go for living expenses in the United States. So I really want to encourage you that this is the day to strengthen yourself. Get into the Word of God and begin to just pray and spend time with the Lord and tell Him to strengthen you for the journey that lies ahead. That's one of the things that we have on our radio program is we want people to eat the truth, because that's the fuel for the journey, and applying the truth is going to give you the strength for the journey that lies ahead, because we don't know what the journey is going to look like, but we have to have the truth in us as the fuel to make this journey that lies ahead for us. So I encourage you to get into the Word of God, spend time in prayer, listening to encouraging words of truth that will strengthen you, and be around people that are encouraging you, will encourage you. Many people right now, I know it's very difficult when you start talking about some things and they look like you just fell off arrived from planet Mars or something, like you don't have a clue what's going on, but I know this is what the Lord's speaking to me. I just encourage you, just keep things to yourself. It's like you have a little seed that's growing inside of you, and you don't want people trampling all over your garden right now. There's little seeds that God's trying to sprout in your life right now of what He wants you to do, and I suggest maybe it might be better just to keep your mouth shut and just talk amongst those that maybe will help encourage you than discourage you, because there's many people that don't want you to leave because it makes them feel uncomfortable about where they are. I think I caused more disruptions amongst my friends after we actually left, than me trying to talk about it. So I kind of look at it like this. It's like two people in the ditch, and one guy leans over to the other guy and tells the other guy how to get out of the ditch. It's like, what are you telling me how to get out of this ditch if you're in here yourself? So I just encourage you just to just do what God says to do, and maybe don't let people walk through your garden right now, of whatever God's speaking to your heart.
Talking about,
yeah,
Davies, I have a question. My husband and I are planning to move either to Panama or Costa Rica, and we have a small coin collection. Nothing significant, but it consists of some gold coins and some silver coins. Are we permitted to take that with us?
Yes, we did. I declared what I had with a customs agent, but there are some ways that that you can get it through shipping it through various sources. And if you give us a call, you can contact our email address at boquete.help@gmail.com, and then we can maybe just spend some time on the phone and discuss some of these things at a different time. But there are some ways that you can do this, sure. And in fact, you have some ability. I know that some of the laws are changing. We just have to be current with what the laws are as far as transporting different forms of currency. But those are all things that can be looked into, and we can just see where the current laws are right now.
Thank you so much.
Well, exciting. Let's see. We have Regina asked, does Panama use the U.S. dollar for currency, and what will happen when the dollar crashes in the U.S.? Andrew, you want to address some what-ifs?
Yeah, that's a real strong possibility. We've heard some things. Jim Willie's talked about some things about the possibility of the BRICS that has been working with not only the 5 nations that you think of the BRICS, but there's multiple nations, and apparently Panama is on the list of some of those possible nations that will be involved in a different currency possibility. But you know, the Panama Canal is a very strategic piece of property, and so Panama is going to be in the loop somewhere. You know, all of us are going to have this transition that we're going to have to go to. It's going to be like we've been nursing on Mama for all these years, and it says you know, if you believe like I believe that can't think of another nation that fits the description of Mystery Babylon in America right now. And it says all the nations of the world, all the merchants of the world will weep and mourn at the sight of her burning. And so that tells me that there will be a time of destruction that will come while this currency is still intact. So that tells me that we're all going to be weeping and mourning. We're all merchants of the world. So there's going to be a shock that's going to come. But I think one of the things that I believe very strongly is that God said that the gold and silver is mine. And I believe 100 years ago, man said, well, we'll just disconnect from God and we'll just form our own little currency apart from God. And they began to disconnect the link of a $20 bill to a $20 gold piece. And in 1971, President Nixon completely took us off the gold standard, so there has been no link to God, so to speak, or the accountability to God. And I believe what God is going to do is he's going to readjust the accountability. You're either going to be accountable to man in their new system, or they're going to be accountable to God underneath his system. And I believe that the accountability is going to come with a great price, just like Ananias and Sapphira found out when they didn't lay all the proceeds at the apostles' feet, because those proceeds were gold and silver that they'd used to exchange from their property. So I believe that we're going to come into a great accountability with the Lord, or there's going to be a disconnect that we're going to have in two systems. And I think Rick Wiles said it best the other day on one of his programs, but he said that, you know, as the world becomes more lawless, that the body of Christ is going to have to become more obedient. And this is part of the obedience, I believe, but I think that there will be a system that will still have the real value is going to be in God's money. And I encourage people to transfer your wealth in that realm as you can, because that's going to be where the wealth will go through that transition. It's already been through the fire, so to speak. And so I think that this is probably your best bet. I think the paper world is going to go up in smoke. And I think there's going to be no winners or losers. I mean, there's not going to be no winners. You can play the short and the long game, but I think in what's going to happen, there's going to be nothing to give the winner on the other side. So I think real assets are going to be very important for the future. So those are my thoughts there.
Thank you, Andrew. I might just add in, when you look at billionaire money flows right now, they are doing a couple of things. Number one, getting their assets out of the United States. Number two, they're getting into gold, silver, and farmland. Gold, silver, and farmland. Now, you can't eat gold, you can't plant silver, but those are perfect containers like an ark to get you into the new world and bring value and bring your asset with you into the new world. So when you crack that ark open, you've still got something. That's the container value, a transfer value of gold and silver. But when it comes to eating or creating something that is a hard asset through this period of transition, we don't know how long this transition could take. It could be overnight. It could be a McDonald's 6 months, like a drive-through, or it could be 10 or 20 years of grinding and fighting, and just it could be slow. Meanwhile, you can't just sit on gold and silver. You have to produce something. So if you have an interest in growing, remember the three ways: it's grow it, it's mine it, or make it. And if you're not mining it or making it, you may want to think about growing it. I threw up real quickly here our Global Food Providers website, globalfoodproviders.com. And this is our global initiative, Growers United Against World Hunger. 4 out of 10 people are not going to be able to eat in 10 years. That's sure death. Now, we've got Christian people in different nations, particularly in India, that are not eating now. They're starving to death right now. And we have pastors, church planters, community leaders who are wanting to learn how to grow food. I would recommend that if you've ever had a green thumb and you ever had an affinity towards growing something, you may want to consider growing food in Panama, one of the greatest places in the world with the most perfect environment, volcanic dirt, just waiting for plants to be grown, and it's a 12-month growing season under a greenhouse in a controlled environment. Unbelievable harvest yields in a greenhouse. I mean, I'm telling you, over the top, anything you've ever imagined, you can grow more in a greenhouse in this environment here than you could ever grow in the USA. I might mention I was with a farmer who has an 80-acre organic field with little input into it. He was happy making $1,000 per year per acre. And we showed him how, in a particular greenhouse setup that he was interested in, that he could make $200,000 per year per acre of commercial greenhouse. So he said, well, I just have one crop because I have winter time. And we said, well, welcome to continual summer. You may want to consider growing food. Now, if it's true that 10 years from now, 4 out of 10 people cannot eat, what do you think the demand of food is going to be? I believe, as we're looking here, peppers and tomatoes and garlic and beans, these are hard assets. They don't last as long as gold or silver. You're going to have to eat them, but it is created wealth. And if there was ever a time to go back to the Garden of Eden and start maintaining the garden that God gave you, it would be this season. I want to give you that as an encouragement. And if you go out here to this Global Food Providers, click on videos and go down and listen to Jim Rogers, let him school us a little bit about his thoughts on growing food in the next 10 years, and that farmers will be driving Lamborghinis while stock market people are going to be begging and looking for a job. Very interesting. So I think that this is also a hard asset opportunity. Don't forget that in the land of the capacity to grow enormous amounts of food and have a blast doing it. I believe a lot of farmers are on their way to Panama and to Costa Rica and into Central and South America, where the bulk of fruits and vegetables are being grown for the world right now. But I promise you, just as much as being grown on purpose, the rest of it's falling to the ground and just going into the ground. There's so much food produced here and being wasted just because they can't get to it all. It's an amazing thing. So while California is going down in drought, while the production food band is traveling 200 miles south and it's going to wipe out a lot of farmers up north, here you have this beautiful growing environment with a multiplied capacity, you may want to consider, like Jed Clampett, loading up the truck and heading to Boquete. All right, any other questions? Okay, let's see here.
Looks like David does.
Okay, we got another one here. And by the way, David was talking about the corp, the SAC corp. If you're moving down here into the Friendly Nations visa to get into business, you're going to need to have an SA. So they're just telling you this is the requirement to prove that you're coming down here to do business. Let's see here to clarify. He says, I was just asking if the Panama government hounded you to actually do something with the C corp. Ah, okay. You know what? Once you get it, you're never going to hear from them again. No, absolutely not. No, they are not demanding that you get into business. As a matter of fact, I know people right now that are getting their permanent residency, getting the SA set up, and then they're going back to their home country for a time being. Now, if you do that, you do need to come visit Panama once a year to keep your permanent residency active. But no, there is absolutely no requirement on you to do anything with that. Remember, you are not living in a police state in Panama. They don't have enough police. Well, they have enough. They have enough to handle the limited crime, but there's much less crime in Panama than there is in the United States. There's much less people in prison in Panama than there are in the United States, and we don't have an IRS that operates like a terrorist tax division here in Panama. They just don't have the employees to come chasing you around to find out if you got your permit or got your taxes paid up this month. And so you're really stepping back 30 years when you come to Panama. They're just not there yet. It used to take, I believe, Andrew, 9 months to get about 9 months to get your permanent residency, 6 to 9, and all of a sudden you know what happened? Panama City went on computers. They got themselves computerized, and it went to 6 weeks. It was an amazing thing. But they just in 2014 computerized. Until then, it was all papers and file folders and paper clips.
Amazing.
Are there any incentives for people coming to open businesses? Any tax incentives? Great question. Andrew, do you know anything?
Well, I was just going to say, you probably can answer this better, but how about the money that they'll give back on your greenhouse? The government's really trying to encourage agricultural growth here in the country, and there's a great incentive to begin an agricultural business. So I know if you looked into this a little bit more, why don't you explain the incentives there?
Yes, it's called Law 25, and Law 25 is a miracle piece of legislation in Panama. If you are interested in farming, they're recommending for the small farmer 1 hectare in size. Now, you could do 2, 3, or 4 hectares. That's fine, but you have to do it 1 hectare at a time. And if you have 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acres, and you'd like to put a greenhouse on it, a barn, you want to buy a tractor, you want to set up an aquaponics or hydroponics system, something to produce food. You want to throw some cattle on there and milk them, anything in the agriculture arena, Law 25 will allow you to a reimbursement, a rebate of 50% of your investment in that farm. Now, they will not pay for the farm land, but they will pay 50% of the cost of the greenhouse, 50% of the cost of the tractor and the equipment. That's an amazing thing. And I don't know any place in the world that this is happening. Now, they've been rotating between 50 and 80% on capital improvements like the greenhouse, but right now they're at 50. They may go back to 80 in the future. But even at 50%, imagine the government stepping in. They're giving you a grant, and here's how it works. You have to build it, and then typically within 18 to 24 months, you will get your check after you've submitted everything and it's been finalized and approved. So you're going to build it at full price, and within a year and a half to 2 years, they're going to come through with some Panama Canal money, and they're going to hand you a 50% rebate check so that you will want to go do it again, because they're trying to they're increasing their export capacity in this country. Right now, they're way behind Anything you can grow will be bought immediately. There's no problem selling about anything you want to grow. They are building right now two canal ports, dry canal ports, one on the Pacific side down by the Costa Rica border, and the other up by Bocas del Toro. They're building a road. I'm expecting it'll probably 3 to 5 years before it's all completed, but they're going to be dry shipping food from your farm down to the Pacific or up over to the Caribbean, depending on where it's going to be exported. They're planning to be an export nation quickly, and you can join in on that. The government will help you. Now, their government's not like the United States government. If they give you a grant, there's no restrictions. They're not coming in and saying, now you can't talk about Jesus to your employees. There's no restriction. They're just going to come in and help you. And they're not asking for anything in return other than maybe a picture of them shaking hands with you as they're handing you the check. That is Law 25. It's in action. It's the greatest secret for any farmer who's never heard of it before, and it should be the final reason for any farmer to sell north and buy south and get busy in a 12-month growing cycle. Okay, let's...
Another little incentive I was going to mention here, I've noticed that the prices of tickets to come here have dropped recently. So I just go on orbitz.com, but you can just check the tickets. I've just noticed that there's been a price reduction here recently. So, if you're planning like an exploratory trip, which I would generally recommend, just take a week off and come and just do an exploratory trip, and we can help you from this end in many different ways. But that's usually a way a lot of people do, is they just come down and say, well, Lord, this is really where you want me to go. And so this is just where I would start.
Absolutely. I was in here just a second ago trying to do one. We've seen DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, to David, Panama for $440. That's round trip, and that is an amazing price. If you had an interest in coming down for a week, might just check weekdays. We've noticed that the weekdays seem to be a little cheaper than weekends, but they are begging you to come down and check things out with cheap airline fares. Okay, David also asked a question: are tools, professional tools like DeWalt, etc., are they easily obtained, or should I import all my pro tools? Great question. Yes, all of your tools are available here. I would say they are U.S. cost plus 10% is probably a good shot. If you have any good tools, and if you get a Friendly Nations visa or a Retarista visa, you will have the ability to ship. You'll have the ability to ship your tools, and $10,000 garage sale price worth of furnishings and home goods. You can ship those without any import tax into Panama. So if you feel that you'd like to bring your tools, bring them on down, and just use them as part of your entry through your Friendly Nations visa, and it won't cost you any import fees. Otherwise, if you need a new DeWalt drill, it is down the road here. David has many different places. My favorite place is called the Do It Center, which is Home Depot, Panama. Okay, any other questions? Feel free to throw them out. I didn't get anything there on my little trial on DFW, but I'm going to try another one here. Yes, question?
Gentlemen, this is, about Panama, and we've been debating about Panama, Costa Rica. Would you happen to know if Costa Rica is offering the same kind of incentives for farmers?
Yes, I do know.
Oh, I love you.
I know. Unfortunately, the answer is no. Costa Rica is not offering any incentives whatsoever for you to move to their nation. They do have a 40% import fee on just about everything. So the cost of living in Panama versus Costa Rica will be 40% more, hands down. in just about everything from gasoline to food costs on down the road. Land is also seems to be much, much higher in Costa Rica. We spent a couple years in Costa Rica looking for farmland to put greenhouses on, and we came to the conclusion personally that we would have to grow gold in order to be able to pay off the high price of their land. And otherwise, we could find cheaper land, but it would be about 3 to 4 hours away from population zones, and trying to ship fresh produce 3 or 4 hours in a big truck would steal all the profits and all the reason you were growing in the first place. So it just was not a fit for us in the agricultural arena. And then we found Law 25 Panama. We found this beautiful growing arena in the Chiriqui province of Panama, and we found land values that were much, much less. As in, let's say the difference between $200,000 per hectare in Costa Rica versus maybe $30,000 or $40,000 per hectare in Panama. Now, you won't get cheap land in Boquete, but I would recommend get 15 or 20 minutes outside of Boquete anyway if you want to grow agricultural food. That's where all the good climates are for growing 12-month cycles.
Well, my only regret is we're farmers here in Tennessee, and we're dairy goat farmers and crops and things. And we just bought tickets to go on a recon mission for Costa Rica. And it's too bad we didn't see your webcast before we paid for those tickets.
Well, if you have a chance, jump on a bus, take 2 of your days and come to Panama, to Boquete. It's about...
we can do that.
If you can do that, you really do need to. And I take people from time to time. I take them from Costa Rica to Panama and let them enjoy both nations, and you will hands down be able to decide without a question. You'll never have a question again which nation you want to live in. Some just say, I am home in Costa Rica. I don't want Panama. And the others say, oh my, I'm glad I came over here and saw this. I want to stay in Panama. And it would be well worth your time. A bus ticket from San Jose to David will cost you, I think, $20. And they're real nice luxury liner buses for the most part. Tika Bus is the group. Get on their bus, come on down to David, and call us, and one of us will try to come down and pick you up and bring you up the mountain.
Well, actually, we will. We're planning on coming down July, and July 13th or 14th, we'd meet up with someone in Costa Rica, but then after that, we're there till the 18th, so we will.
There you go. We'd love to see you, and you need any personal ideas on Costa Rica, just email me or send me an email afterwards on what you're doing, where you're flying into, what you're planning on, and I'll give you some good restaurants or some good ideas.
Thank you. My husband's demanding the phone, so here goes.
Okay.
Hi, guys. I mean, of course, there's a lot of reasons: the economy, the politics here, and everything. That's the reason why we're moving down. But the main reason that I want to move down there is for ministry. I'm big into music. I have a home studio here. I plan to bring all my equipment with me, and I would love to meet up with you guys and make some, network connections or something like that if I could.
Well, we sure hope you do. We sure hope you do. You come on up that mountain when you get to Costa Rica. Get over here for a couple days, and we will certainly meet up with you. Andrew and both of our offices are in the San Francisco Plaza. Find us, and but better than that, email us and let us know exactly when you're coming, so we can be ready for you. But we'd love to
we'll do that.
And Costa Rica will be a beautiful, gorgeous nation. It just has a very socialistic government, and which has affected the psyche of most of the people who live there, and it makes it kind of tough to do business there.
Well, the main reason we chose Costa Rica over Panama was the decline of the U.S. dollar. I mean, that was our main concern.
Understood. Yes, I did the same thing for a little over 4.5 years ago. I moved there, transferred a bunch of money into the colony, and then it fell against the dollar. So they're all falling, brother.
I understand.
But and Costa Rica is in deep, deep, deep debt. They have been warned by the IMF that if they don't stop spending like America, that they're going to be penalized. So I think all the nations are in trouble when it comes to currencies, and the key is to get into a hard asset and get into a good productive environment. If you're farmers, you guys are on the cutting edge of the next great move on the planet.
All right, that's it. We're coming to Panama.
We'll look forward to
That just said it when you said IMF and spending. We're coming to Panama. We will see you there in July.
We sure look forward to it. And don't think Panama's in debt too. So just
well, who isn't? But God bless you, and we really appreciate this webinar. It's been very, very helpful.
God bless you guys. Andrew, anything to add to that? Okay, well, maybe Andrew's, he may be on a phone call right now. Anyone else? Any final questions before we close for the evening?
I just had my mute on there, just like you did earlier.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited just to see the quality of people that God seems to be sending up here. It's one thing for somebody to try to establish some sort of community, but it's another thing for God to build the house. I think of the scripture that unless the Lord builds the house, they that build it labor in vain. And what I'm really seeing is that the Lord is building the house, and it's for a purpose. And again, you mentioned, Daniel, earlier that it seemed like this could be a trampoline, that this could be a training center, for people to get off their training wheels. It's like we've all been riding bicycles with training wheels, and God's trying to teach us how to ride on our own now, instead of having to have this support system of our false gods, so to speak. And we're getting to where we really trust the Lord, and we're really willing to step out and actually ride this bicycle without all the other crutches that we've been leaning on our life and not even realizing it. But the people that God seems to be sending here are just the unbelievably mature, and it's not only mature when you get here, but you're going to get matured after you arrive, because there's a maturing process that takes place once you leave your comfort zone. So we welcome all those willing to leave, and we'll do all we can to help when you get here.
We'll look forward to that, absolutely. I have to say, we've said this in the other webinars. Don't miss the other webinars, which are dealing in other topics. But there is such a spirit of camaraderie, a unity in the spirit here, and such a quality of people that are coming up. Andrew, I can't tell you how many times we've heard in the last month people are just sitting in a simple home church service and saying, this is the most powerful move of the Holy Spirit I've ever felt in my life. Or it's been a long, long time since I've felt the presence of God like this. My answer to people when they keep saying this week after week when they come is that you find a united group of people who've all paid the same price. They've all had to leave their country. They've had to leave their people and their father's household, just like God told Abram in Genesis 12. And when you do that, you come to a new place, and you're all immigrants, and you're all in a foreign land, and you're all living by faith, trusting the Lord in a very foreign place, and it develops a true unity of the Spirit. And real honestly, in church, I pastored for 20 years, and I've been to many different churches, and typically the amount of unity that you get in a church is basically 20 minutes worth. In other words, about 20 minutes to drive to church, and that's my commitment level to that church. But when you have to move to another nation to be a part of the move of God, there is a completely different structure and a complete different level of faith, and God meets you in a brand new way. I think just for the spiritual implication, it would cost you very, very little if you feel at all inclined to come to Panama or to any other nation that God's calling you to. Just go do it. And whether it costs you all you have or whether it costs you very little financially, you're going to have a revolution take place in your heart, your spirit, your life, and you're going to have some freedom and some liberty restored to you. I want to encourage you on that. And again, I'm just so impressed with what God is doing in this nation and how He's drawing people together and putting together a quality team. Andrew, would you like to pray for us as we prepare to close?
Yes, you bet. I was just going to say there's a couple of quick questions people asked. Tools. I would suggest bringing tools if you have tools. They're expensive to replace here. A friend of mine just brought them in like these kind of a hard Tupperware type boxes on, in their luggage when they came. Also, I would suggest renting is the other question. Generally, do you suggest renting? What about buying land, renting home temporarily? That's what I would suggest. Allows you to get a feel for the area and find out where you really want to be. I also kind of think there's going to be a reset that takes place when the housing market declines in the United States. It had an effect down here as well as the liquidity began to dry up. So I think renting is a good thing to do initially when you come. So those are two quick questions I want to answer. But sure, I'd love to pray. Father, I just ask, Lord, that you would open the eyes of the blind, Lord. Father, I pray that you would show each person that's listening what your will is for their life, Lord, that you would speak to their hearts, that you would give them peace, Lord. Lord, that you, as they seek you, Lord, in your will in their lives, Father, that you would give them peace in the direction that they're supposed to go, Lord. Father, Colossians 3:15 says, let the peace of God rule in your heart, and rule means to literally govern or umpire, Lord. So I ask that the peace of God would call the shots, Lord, and what they're to do, Lord. And even though it may be kind of scary to make some big decisions like this, Lord, that you would give them a peace and give them a direction, Lord, as the Prince of Peace, that you would, and the Author of Peace, Lord, that you would direct them with your peace, Father. And I just thank you, Lord, for giving each one wisdom. Wisdom as never before, Lord, as they need great wisdom to make great big decisions, Lord, in their life, Father, that your wisdom would precede them, Father, and guide them and give them light, Lord, in Jesus' name. Thank you, Lord.
Amen. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks to all that are here. If you would like to reach us again, please go to boquete.help@gmail.com. And Andrew, one of his staff team, will answer you just as quickly as possible. If you're planning a discovery trip, you absolutely have to email us and let us know you're coming. We want to know. We'll try to help out. We do kind of know where some of the short-term rentals are, where you can get a cheap rental car. Try not to rent your car down at the Panama City airport if possible. They'll charge you $400 a week just for insurance. Typically, rental around here in Boquete is $30, $35, or $40 a day, insurance and everything included. So if we can get you here to David and up to Boquete, we can get you the rental car. We'll try to help you any way we can. With that, I'm going to say good night and God bless you. We'll see you at the next webinar.